One peculiar challenge if you are in an IP law practice is that there are a lot of deadlines to deal with. And you really need a very good docketing system to ensure that you do not end up missing on any of those deadlines. You need to put that kind of infrastructure in place.
Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of WhyLaw, powered by Veteran Result. In today's episode, we will be talking about LL.M abroad, how to have your own practice, specializing in intellectual property law, and much more. For this episode, we are glad to have one of India's leading IP law practitioner, Mr. Gaurav Miglani, managing partner of Worldwide Intellec. Mr. Gaurav has over 18 years of experience in IP law practice and specializes in trademark infringement, unfair competition, dispute resolution, and contract law matters. He is an active member of International Trademarks Association and is currently the chair of Enforcement Committee of INTA and co-chair of INTA's India Global Advisory Council. In a niche practice like IPR with complex matters, it becomes extremely difficult for any professional to make a mark in this field of IPR. Therefore, we have brought this exclusive episode featuring an eminent IPR lawyer to help you navigate your career in IPR as well as gain practical insights into the working of IPR matters. So make sure that you stay till the end of this episode for these insights. Gaurav, can you please share a brief overview of you and your life?
Okay, so what do I share about my life in general? But professionally, yes, I'm a lawyer. I practice intellectual property law here in New Delhi, India. I started my career back in 2005 when I graduated. I did my bachelor's from the Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies, IP University. That was there were only two institutions back then doing a 5-year law course. One was MIPS and the other was Amity. And then I went on to pursue my master's in intellectual property from Franklin Pierce Law Center in Concord, New Hampshire. And so I came back in 2006. I, in fact, completed my master's in 10 months. I was kind of very eager to come back and start my practice of law here in India. So I came back in 2006 and I started this practice of law initially with my father. Because he's also a lawyer, and he was, so to say, my inspiration to begin with in this field. And then I started this practice with him, and I worked with him for 5 years. And that's when I kind of moved on to another office, and I started this firm, Worldwide Intellec, which is what I currently run and manage.
That's great, sir. It's good to know that you started your practice with your father and then went on to have your own independent practice. Taking it from the beginning, Gaurav, I'd like to know what motivated you to pursue law as a profession. Any specific experiences that helped you take the decision that now you want to enter the legal profession?
As I said, the initial inspiration came from home because I saw my father working very hard during his initial years and how he was, working late nights and putting in a lot of blood and sweat into this field, because as the first generation, the things are very different from how things are for us around.
That was a first generation.
That's right.
Okay.
So, so when we started this, when he started his practice, and I kind of noticed that how he was working very hard, I think that gave me that motivation that I should probably take his legacy forward and do something in this field. So the initial inclination therefore came from him. But of course, I also always believed, and that's how I saw that this is one profession that really gives you great opportunities to shape public policy if you want to, and if you want to really contribute to the greater good of the society and the nation. There are a lot of opportunities here, as opposed to maybe various other profession or activities that you may engage in.
Right. Maybe that's why everybody says that law is a noble profession. You get to give back to the society in some or the other. So, Gaurav, when did you decide to pursue LL.M and intellectual property? How did you select the college? And most importantly, how did it contribute in shaping you as a legal professional?
I would say I was in the third or fourth year of my bachelor's. I think third year when I was pursuing my bachelor's course here in Delhi. I was fortunate to meet who I call him as my mentor in the field of IP, because he introduced me to this university in US, and he encouraged me to really go and pursue masters. Although it was also one of my parents' aspirations and dreams, that probably because back then, as I said, when they started, the struggles were a little different, and my father didn't have those kind of resources, so he obviously always wanted that maybe his son should pursue a master's degree someday from abroad. And somewhere back in his mind as well, there was this kind of dream, so to say, that that he should pursue if I could not go. And then I was fortunate to meet this guy, Sumit Agarwal, who had pursued masters from this university, and he was teaching us intellectual property in our bachelor's course. And he really encouraged me to that if I wanted to make a career in IP, then I must pursue a master's, and if I really wanted to go there, then this must be the law school. And I think I'm forever grateful to him for that, because it was a life-changing experience for me. Because although it's not one of the very big universities of the likes of Harvard's or Stanford's, but I think it's a very, very cohesive community, and I met some wonderful people. I've made lifelong friends from there, and people who I can rely upon forever, for all times to come, and who really immensely helped me in building this practice as well, in that sense. Because when a client asks me that if I can handle something in Argentina or Azerbaijan, I know a contact there, and I know a person there who I can say that he's my friend, he's my colleague. I've known him for long, and I know I can trust him for any of your matters. And therefore, when you send that kind of work abroad, you not just also get work from them, but it also helps you build a kind of an international practice where you get exposed to what's happening around the world in the field of IP. So I think all of these lifelong friendships that I have forged, and the contacts and the networks that I have built might not have been possible if there was no exposure in that sense of studying, pursuing a master's degree from abroad, and specifically from this law school. Because I think it's I sometimes feel that when we tend to go to very big schools, we may also tend to get lost in that big world. So I think because it was a very small kind of school, and a small community, everybody knew everybody, and that's why we made those bonds that were really close and strong bonds with each other. So that really helped.
Right, so networking cannot be compromised at the student field.
Absolutely.
Gaurav, would you like to share a particularly complex or challenging case that you've come across in your practice, and how did you resolve it?
I think every case presents its own challenges, and sometimes there are matters that that doesn't present any challenge, and you feel there must be something wrong that I'm doing, because how could it be that that there is absolutely just gone so smooth and clean. But yeah, I mean, if I'm to talk about one particular case that I always kind of share my experience on, it's something that happened very early in my career. There was an anti-counterfeiting raid that we were doing for one of our brand owner, and so eh, we went on to conduct this raid in a very prominent market in Delhi, and we found a large number of counterfeits in that place. And because I was young and those were early days in the profession, I was not accompanied with any of my seniors that day. So it just so happened that I relied upon whatever the enforcement agencies were kind of telling me to do, and not realizing that how things work in law school and how they're being taught in law schools and how they work in practice are very different. So in law schools, we are being told that if there is a cognizable offense that is being committed and you go to a police officer, is bound to register a complaint and take cognizance of it and investigate it. but it doesn't happen in practice like that. So nevertheless, we conducted the raid, and the mistake that I did was that I did not ask the officer to prepare a inventory there and then. And the officer asked me to come in tomorrow, and that we'll conduct the rest of the proceedings tomorrow. And by the time we went there next day, the accused had kind of stepped in and managed a lot of things. So, and the enforcement agencies were suddenly cooperating more with the accused than they were cooperating with the brand owner. So I was really shocked that what's happening here, and because we one had not experienced these things on ground. So that case particularly I remember, because I really, as a very junior in the profession, I took a very firm stand and took the enforcement agency head on and said, no, this has to be done, and this has to be done this way, no matter what. And I think that was a very challenging case early on in my life that I remember. What seemed to be otherwise a straightforward case ended up being so complicated for the client, and though ultimately we ended up getting what we wanted, but it became really complex one.
Okay. You rightly said that what we learn in college as compared to what happens in practice are two very different worlds. And
That's right.
one experience is only once you step into that profession and do it.
That's
right. So Gaurav, in your 18 years of experience, what are some key challenges you faced or are maybe facing in specifically the field of intellectual property law, and how do you navigate them in your practice?
I would say that there's some challenges in this that are peculiar to this field on the procedural side, and then there's some substantive challenges that could be there in every field and that you would experience. But I would share on both sides. So I think one peculiar challenge, if you are in an IP law practice, is that there are a lot of deadlines to deal with, and you'd really need a very good docketing system to ensure that you do not end up missing on any of those deadlines. You need to put that kind of infrastructure in place, which I feel is very peculiar to this practice, because usually if I see some of my colleagues, who are practicing on the criminal side, and I would tell them that, look, I sent you this email, you didn't even look at it. And they said, bro, I don't look at these emails at all. And I feel so surprised that, for us, emails are just everything. And, one email you end up missing, and your client may end up losing a very valuable IP right. So because every matter just has a deadline, and if you do not comply with that, consequences following law. So in that sense, yes, I feel that's a very peculiar challenge, which is if you're practicing in the field of IP. On the substantive side, I would say that there are different set of challenges every day because IP law has very rapidly evolved with the evolution in technology, and law has always kind of had to catch up and keep pace with the technology. And specifically today, I mean, in the field of with this whole digital era of things happening around the world, where you may be accessing the infringing content here, but that infringement actually took place in another country, and the servers where it's being stored are in another country, and the people who are actually behind this, the company is incorporated in a fourth country. So it's just there are cross-border issues of enforcement of IP rights, especially in the digital age. So those issues are really getting complex, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to catch up and get hold of these infringers and bring them to justice, and to really stop the infringement happening in the online space. So yes, those I would say are the most critical issues that one has to deal with, and I mean today as of this age, how things are going, it can I mean the law really has to have catch up hard, and courts have been evolving various different dispute resolution methods, including, for instance, granting dynamic blocking injunctions, so to prevent infringements happening on different websites and you take an action on one website, and that website just moves on to another web hosting service provider or to just another domain name. So how do you prevent? So you grant an injunction which is dynamic in nature, and that prevents not just a website being with this domain name being hosted on this web hosting service provider, but maybe an injunction against any other web hosting service provider as well, or any other domain name registrar as well. So the content is getting dynamic, and I think these are the issues that are really getting complex in today's IP world.
It's a really interesting insight. So, I mean, we keep using websites on a daily basis, but we don't really know what really happens on the legal side of it. So, thank you for sharing that. So, according to you, Gaurav, what skills are required to succeed in the IP law career? And how are these skills different from the skills required for somebody to exceed in any other practice area of law?
I think the skill that's needed to succeed in anything in life is hard work. And there's absolutely no substitute for it. But if you're asking me, specifically peculiar to, when one is considering a practice in the field of intellectual property law, and I said, IP law is certainly very international in nature. And there are a lot of dynamics in the sense of what's happening in other parts of the world as well in this field, because there are a lot of cross-border issues, and especially in this digital age. So I think it's very important for a person to keep himself or herself abreast of what's happening, not just in how the law is developing in India, but how the law is kind of taking shape in other parts of the world as well. And we often cite judgments from UK, from the US, from Australia, from a number of other common law jurisdictions to try and convince the judges that, look, that's how law has developed in various different parts of the world. And there is therefore a need for us also to kind of revisit that our approach, and probably progress in terms of how law is developing in other jurisdictions as well. And those foreign judgments have played a very vital role in the progress of IP law in our country, in the development of law in our country as well. So I think that's a very a component that is kind of peculiar to this kind of law, as opposed to other practices. Let's say maybe a practice in criminal law or labor laws. So it's something that's peculiar to IP, I would say.
All right, so that's a really good take, and definitely we couldn't have got it from anybody else but you. So thank you for sharing that. So due to the limited number of job opportunities that are there in the IP law space, there are many professionals who have immense amount of knowledge in terms of IP law, but have not yet received any opportunities or job per se. So do you think it would be wise for them to set up a practice of their own? And how do you think they should go forward and grow their own independent practice?
Well, if you know someone who has immense amount of knowledge in IP law and they've not found a job, please send them to me, because I think if you ask people who are employers on the other side of people who are running IP law firms, we find it very hard to find people who, there are a lot of people who are interested in IP today, but someone who has a very good knowledge of this field and who's looking for a job, certainly I am sure there are a number of opportunities. But yes, of course, if let's say you are a fresher and you're looking to set up your own kind of independent practice to begin with, my advice has always been that don't start too early, because this is a very niche kind of field to practice, and there are, if you end up, as I said, there are deadlines everywhere. You end up missing a deadline, it could mean losing a valuable IP right for your client. For instance, you end up missing a deadline in a patent matter, it's gone forever. So, and as a youngster, these mistakes can happen. So unless you have absolutely familiarized yourself with the law and procedure, and you're very confident that, yes, I'm now in a position to take this up on my own, I would suggest that one should not start too early in this profession on their own, especially in the field of IP, because the consequences for your client can be huge. And today there could be liability issues on the other side as well. So that would be my advice, not to start early. But that's not to say that, that I'm in any manner kind of discouraging people to start their own IP practice. In fact, I've always encouraged all of my juniors and my associates who have worked with me to put in hard work at this age when they're learning. And, once they have this kind of confidence that, yes, they can now probably, set up something of their independent, no matter how small, that they should do it. And many of my colleagues who have worked with me, they have gone on to set up their own individual practices, and they're doing so good. And I feel very happy about, and when I see them in courts and practicing, I see very happy. I see that they're enjoying their work, they're doing good work, they're getting good quality of work, and I feel very happy about it. So I think my advice would be that get yourself familiarized with law and procedure. Not that you will not make mistakes going forward. Mistakes will happen, but at least that you are not going to make blunders. A mistake could still anyways happen. Even we are not averse to it. Even we could make it today, and we do make it as well. But at the end of the day, I think for juniors, for freshers who have absolutely no exposure to the actual world, who've just been out, they've not, as I said, seen law in action, vis-a-vis studied law in books. My advice would be to first get a good training ground, get yourself associated with good chambers, good people, good law firms, IP firms, and work with them, understand the nuances of this field. And then once you feel that you are kind of ready to take it on, and you have at least that kind of basic understanding and knowledge of the law and procedure, then yes, of course, go ahead and start your practice. And I'm sure there's a lot of work in IP, because at the end of the day, it's not just big companies today, big corporates who are filing for patents or trademarks or designs. They're small inventors, who cannot afford big law firms. So there is a market for everyone. What I'm saying is that even if you're starting young, there will be a client who will come to you because he cannot afford a big law firm. He needs someone who's maybe not too experienced in the profession, but who may be able to still handle it effectively at a very affordable price as compared to a bigger law firm. So I think there's market for everyone. There's work for everyone, and I encourage people to start their own practices.
Definitely, sir. There are many budding lawyers who really want to have their own practice, and I'm sure your insights would really help them by having their own practice in the near future. So, sir, in the digital era where IP infringement has become extremely easy, how do you, as an expert, advise your clients and rule about these matters?
So as we talked, that things have really gotten complicated in this digital world, and there is no straitjacket formula for every case, of course. So for instance, there was this one matter where somebody had completely replicated a client's website, and they were not just kind of misleading people in terms of giving contact numbers and reproducing the entire content of the website and making it appear as if that they are the real brand owners, but they were also collecting monies from people. They're placing or encouraging people to place orders on WhatsApp, and they were making huge amount of monies by duping people, making themselves appear to be the real entity. And none of those contact details of this entity was available, because they had used a client's name, they had used their client's address, and all we had was a WhatsApp number. And so it was one of those cases where you needed orders from the courts, not just against this unknown entity, a John Doe order, but also specific directions to the banks to where these monies were being kind of collected. And these guys were changing those bank accounts very frequently. So every time you would contact them, they would give a different bank account. So we had to really rope in so many of banks and get specific directions against them, asking them to share KYC details as to who had opened these bank accounts, and by providing what documents. We had to take directions against the telecom service provider to share the call logs, and so that we are able to somehow get behind as to get to actually who is actually behind this whole operation, because otherwise it's all on the anonymous web and you do not know what's happening there. So things have really gotten complicated in that sense that the in the digital age you can replicate anything at a very low cost and very anonymously, and all of these registrant details of a website are hidden behind these privacy shields. So you would never know who these people are. Even if you were to obtain orders against a domain name registrars asking them to disclose, these registrations have been obtained in the name of fake names and entities. So it's becoming really difficult to kind of enforce the brand owner's rights today, especially in the digital age. And yes, I only see these issues getting more and more complicated as we move ahead, because the way technology is growing, it's not going to get any simpler.
Yes, absolutely. So, and it's a niche field, so you really need to have that kind of expertise to deal with such situations. So, I really got good insights from you how you handled it and advised your clients around it. Thank you. Gaurav, everyone around these days is using ChatGPT to create content. And what do you think are the implications of using such content on different forums, and how does it affect the copyright law?
No, I was actually waiting when is ChatGPT going to come up in this conversation, because it's almost an inevitable question these days. Uh, of course, there are many concerns that these technologies are bringing in. For instance, and especially these AI-driven engines creating content. Uh, One of the issue is who owns the content. While people want to claim ownership, but if this content is found to be infringing, they want to disclaim that ownership as well, that I didn't do it. Right. So there are issues as to ownership, as to who, if an AI has created, if ChatGPT has created a poetry, who owns that piece. Of course, these issues are being hotly debated across the world, and as of now, courts have shown reluctance to say that an AI cannot be the creator, an AI cannot be the inventor, because at the end of the day, you need a human author, you need someone to create, someone to write, and an AI-generated content is not something that should be that could be said that the software developer owns it, because he wrote the code, and the code then eventually ended up creating the content, because all of these are actually using the existing copyrighted or public domain works and learning from those machine learning techniques to create that content. So how far this is original creation is the question. And secondly, if this leads to any infringement, then obviously who is liable? And of course, there have been situations where AI has generated content, which is being found to be very similar and very close to something that was authored by someone else. So at the end of the day, if the questions are that how similar this work is, and if it is found to be infringing, then who is liable? So therefore, ChatGPT and a lot of other AI tools are really going to stretch the limits of copyright law to another level. And although copyright law has developed over the last few decades, when we moved from analog to digital, and the law kind of kept its pace, although it struggled in the initial years. But I think artificial intelligence is going to be another level altogether.
Right, you have rightly said how, as much as it is useful today, it brings a big question on the originality and liability as well. So That's a huge question today when it comes to a ChatGPT.
That's right.
So looking ahead, Gaurav, what emerging trends or issues do you think would shape the landscape of law, especially when it comes to intellectual property in the years to come?
As we're talking about technology, I think this is going to be a game changer. Specifically, we just talked about, artificial intelligence, chat GPT, and I think likewise metaverse and NFTs. And there are a number of issues there. Who owns these digital avatars and, this digital piece of clothing that have been created? And how are these rights going to be passed on to someone else? When does someone else become the owner? Because nothing physical is actually being handed over, and so there are huge issues concerning intellectual properties, ownership, infringement, and various other aspects in these areas as well. I remember we were having this discussion in one of the forums, and the person on the other side said, my daughter came to me and said, Dad, you own this house in the physical world, but do you know I own this in the metaverse? So he said, I didn't even know, and what the metaverse is. And now this generation, they own virtual piece of land, and how this is going to come into conflict with different entities owning very similar content that's digitally created. So there are a host of issues there. It's like a Pandora box to open. And I think these are the issues that are going to be debated in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in the field of intellectual property. We already have a judgment on NFTs from the Delhi High Court, and it's being very hotly debated on the aspects of who owns IP rights where and how these rights can be transferred. So yeah, these are the issues that are going to come up.
Wow, that's great. I'm particularly impressed by how one of your clients' daughter came up and told about Metaverse and owning the property there. It's interesting to know that, sir. Career in intellectual property law based on your own experiences.
My advice would be go for it, because this is one area of law which is it's a very clean kind of practice, and it's an upcoming field in the sense that there's going to be lots of work in the years to come. It has already evolved to a very good level. There is, as I said, there's a lot of work for everyone. There's market for everyone, and the government is giving a lot of push to promote patents, specifically in the universities, promoting small individual inventors to file patents, and including trademarks and other forms of IP as well. So I think there is going to be a lot of work, and it's one area of law where you can really have that kind of international exposure. There are seminars and conferences happening everywhere around the world that give you a lot of insight into what's happening in the field of IP across the world. And I personally do attend to many of those, and I think those have also really contributed a lot in my IP practice. But apart from that, to anyone who's willing to work hard and who's willing to make a career in law, I think intellectual property is a very good field. It's a very paying field as opposed to a number of other law practices that I have seen. So yes, that would be my advice. Go for it.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. And this whole interaction has been wonderful. We have got great insights, and I'm sure that anybody who wants to create a mark in this niche practice would be able to take away some good insights from this.
Thank you. My pleasure. And thank you for inviting me for this conversation. And I'm glad we had this today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.